Here. So welcome and very happy to be here. My name is Daniel. I'm CTO of Picnic, an online supermarket that we started a few years ago here. And we have a very simple mission. We want to make grocery shopping simple, fun, and affordable for everyone. What I want to talk about today is a little bit on how we are using machine learning, and especially how we have used machine learning to disrupt the product side, basically what you use for shopping in Picnic. But even more, and this is very interesting for such a developer audience, how do we use and what do we see as future trends, how machine learning will basically redefine how we do software engineering. Maybe first disclaimer and first message ahead, actually we will need in the future more software developers. So whoever says that development will be completely automated, goes away, and we don't need developers, has never been a real developer. So I think that is a good message, and we will get to that at the end. So the first thing is that if you're here in Netherlands or maybe Germany or France, then you will see those kind of vehicles. I will not talk much about it, but the story is very much about how do we actually deliver a new service to Picnic, with Picnic to customers. And when we looked into online and food and groceries a couple of years back, then we observed basically that nobody wants to wait for their deliveries and nobody wants to pay more online than offline. And if you put those kind of two insights together, you come up with a very simple proposition. And the proposition is you get all the food you like with the lowest price guarantee at no delivery fees. And that is pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. This is something what customers love. And that is something what we have done for now the last 7, 8, 9 years. And customers are still very excited about it. One other thing, and I think this is something what is relevant for many of you, most likely also is, that if you move from one industry to another industry, for instance, if you move from e-commerce in non-food, for instance, electronics, books, fashion, to food, you see actually that in many cases, people are trying the same type of app, the same kind of user flows. But one thing what we saw is that if you shop online for food, actually you need to have a totally different app. You need to have a totally different experience. You need to rethink fundamentally how product looks like. So just think about if you shop for 2 or 3 items at an electronics store, that is a very different kind of experience what you need than if you shop for food. Because for food, you're shopping typically for 30, 40, 50 items. Food items you know beforehand. You know what is a banana, a milk, a cheese. If you shop for electronics or for books, you need much more insights about the product. But this is basically just about the Picnic story. And if you think a bit about what kind of technology you need for this, then you need obviously a shopping app. That is what you as a consumer use. But 80, 90% is basically the technology behind the scenes. This is about logistics in fulfillment, so basically the warehousing. This is about last mile. This is about order forecasting. This is people management, many, many, many things that basically make such a business. And before I actually dive in, let me show you quickly how a typical day in Picnic looks like. So this is how it looks today. But when we are going back a couple of years, in day 1, we had actually no idea what we should deliver to our customers. So which kind of products to offer. And we took a very simple approach. A simple approach which means, let's look to basically the commonality between all supermarkets, assuming that is something what most likely all customers look for, and then actually ask our customers. So that means we co-created the entire experience using all kind of machine learning tools, but also our customers, to ask them, what do you like? What would you like with your next deliveries? Do you find enough in the meat category? Do you find enough in the cheese category? That meant, in the beginning, with just a few thousand items, we expanded our assortment, not based on what suppliers want to sell through Picnic, but basically what customers want. And that is a very powerful means to basically build up a store that customers really, really like, because it's exactly shipping what they want. And if you do this in a consistent way, then you obviously build a great customer experience, but you have also an interesting challenge, because you get thousands, tens of thousands feedback items. So therefore, you need to think in a very structured way, how do you handle this kind of feedback? So therefore, the first kind of step of machine learning in our product journey was setting up a natural language processing unit that is actually understanding customer feedback that we are getting there. And that was very powerful, because the next step is, if you deliver on a single day to tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands customers, then you get a lot of feedback, because you're talking about logistics, and logistics and warehousing is messy. So in many cases it goes well, but sometimes not. So if it doesn't go well, customers will also tell you. But customers will never tell in the same way. So for instance, here you see 3 examples when customers give feedback that the milk was not delivered in a proper way. There was something wrong. So basically, the next thing is, based on NLP, also build classification to understand what is the case. It is a product case. Is something wrong, or is maybe giving somebody customer feedback? And who can best handle that? And that helps you to basically handle in a very efficient way customer service. And that is something what we've done over the last years. We are not unique in that respect. That is something what many others doing. We do this hopefully a little bit better, but that is something what you will see in many environments. One of the interesting opportunities that we are seeing now is that you can also rethink what do you offer as pictures and kind of product proposition to customers. If you think about your Netflix, then all of us are getting actually different kind of screenshots from a specific movie based on whatever you like and what is your preference and what you most likely like about a movie. But the same you can apply also to e-commerce. In e-commerce, it means basically tailoring a product and a product description to the customer. And as a next step, it means also maybe different kind of angles, different kind of backgrounds, up to the point that you also basically showed in a moving picture. So that is certainly something that has helped quite a bit to also engage with customers whilst they are looking for a product. But that is only the front office. On the back office, there's also a lot of stuff happening. And a lot of stuff means for us on the distribution side. So distribution is last mile. So that is, if you order over Picnic, we deliver to you the groceries based on the planning that we are doing. So so the planning proposition is very strong. So we are delivering in a very narrow window to many, many customers. So if you deliver maybe to 10, 20 type of customers in one go, so in one ride, then if you have just a window of 20 minutes and for every ride you're 1 minute off, you would be already very quickly out of the window. So how do you make sure that you are always in this window? There are kind of 2 elements that make that happen. So number 1 is a good planning. So planning looks for us in the following way. You try to identify how long does it take to stop with a customer, delivery to a customer. If you have a high density, if you deliver to a lot of customers, then actually the route planning is very simple. You start at the beginning of the street, you go until the end of the street, and you're done. So far, so good. But the hard part is to understand how long does it take. And there are many factors. So for instance, are you delivering on the second floor or the first floor? Can you enter the house on the front door or back door? Do the household has a kid or not? And I will explain why that makes a difference. So the first aspect is how easy can we park there? The second one, very important one, is do we deliver to the customer the first time? If you deliver the first time, customers will have questions. So therefore, just plan some extra time. For us, this is 60 seconds that we plan extra to deliver for the customer delivery. The third one is how much do we deliver to the customer? Basically, how many totes, how many bags do we deliver to the customer? And the real magic, and that is where machine learning plays a role, is the kind of last component where we identify, do we deliver at the daytime or nighttime? Because nighttime, it means 23 seconds longer. If we deliver daytime, we don't need this extra time. If we deliver on a busy street versus a less busy street, on a busy street, it's harder to find a parking spot. You need to plan some extra time. In the same way also, do we deliver with a big or a smaller vehicle? Do we have a runner that has just started yesterday, or is he already a very experienced one that has been delivering with us for already years? So therefore, many, many aspects that play a role. But it's only one thing. You can plan up to some point, and the real magic happens if you make it a co-delivery experience. So basically, you share with the customer, we will be there in a second, and then you actually show to the customer, when will we be there? So in real time, you will see, similar to what Uber is doing, but now actually also in food, that we will be there in a couple of minutes. And then you will basically see that we will be there in 3 minutes, who is actually delivering to you. If you click to the icon of the name, you will even see a quote and a message from the customer. So that is certainly something what is very nice to also provide a kind of an effective last mile experience. And if we now put this all together, that is the innovation that is happening in Picnic, but also in the rest of the industry on the product level. But we are not product engineers or we are not product owners here. Many of us are software developers. We love developing. So the real question that many of you are hopefully asking, or at least we are asking ourselves, is what is all this kind of machine learning hype, all the kind of ChatGPT and Copilot, etc., doing to software engineering, what we are doing every single day? And there are a couple of trends that we are seeing that are not happening or that are not influencing immediately what is happening today, but will certainly have an impact tomorrow. So I want to share a couple of thoughts around that. So number one is all of us love, or many of us love, test-driven development. Not all of our engineering managers are super excited about it because it takes sometimes a little bit longer, etc., etc. However, what you will see is that in a world where you can have code generation based on a prompt, you will also very quickly move into a world where you can auto-generate an implementation based on a test. So we will certainly get to a point at some point that based on a test that is written, and first implementation, maybe even a pretty decent implementation, can be auto-generated. And if you take that kind of thought further, then also what we all do around refactoring, mainly about semantically idempotent implementation of what we have seen, well, of an old implementation, but then with a better architecture, better interfaces, more scalable, etc., is something what can be to a large extent be automated. Because you're talking about functionally equivalent rewriting of code. So that is something what in a kind of, at least in a semi-automated way, can be done through those kind of systems in a pretty decent way. We have trialed it. To be frank, it's not yet on the level where you want to really use it in production, but it certainly has potential. But if you take that thought a bit further, you get actually to something what is maybe even more exciting, scary. Let's see how on which end of the spectrum you are. If you think a bit about that, those kind of code generation systems will make developers, or all of us, not only a little bit, but maybe orders of magnitude more effective, then you will maybe get to a fundamentally different view to things like architecture. So for instance, if rewriting a code from scratch will become so cheap, so you're just basically reapplying a prompt, or maybe you just modify a prompt and then a large part of the code is again rewritten, then maybe the focus on architecture, on system design, will become much less relevant. Because in such a world, you can at some point just throw away completely the old implementation and start from scratch again. Many of us have done this when we are writing an MVP, and then you make the real implementation, let's say a scalable implementation, and even then, many of us have discussions with our stakeholders and product owners. Can we not use the current implementation and make it scalable in production? But in such a world, there's definitely an opportunity to go even to have architecture become at least a different function. But it means also that in such a world, that if we are using code generation tools, that many of us, if you're taking code generation out of the box, that we are using, or code quality will converge towards a kind of a real average. Because in essence, all those kind of code generation tools are trained based on open GitLab or GitHub and GitLab and whatever kind of repositories. So basically, to a large extent, you will merge or converge towards the average of whatever you can find on GitHub. But that by itself is maybe not even so bad, because for some use cases, that is good enough. So the real question is, how many and how often do we have cases where the average code quality is not enough? And the typical Pareto 80-20 principle is also applying there. So therefore, there's also kind of a new challenge in the sense of how do we organize our growth path for engineers. Because if we are learning just to write good prompts and no longer write from bottom-up source code or code, then we will at some point also lose the capability to make good code reviews. So this is something what we as industry certainly need to rethink in a very structured way. And I have seen already first examples where we tried something in Picnic that this is at least a point of attention where we need to think in a very structured way about it. But the other thing, and that is something kind of the silver lining and the kind of the nice message, if you want to actually, if you need environment, in a product, in a part of your business, kind of top-notch code that goes beyond the average, that will become even more valuable. So therefore, as long as we can kind of co-develop with all those kind of code generation systems, then the work that we as engineers are doing becomes probably even more valuable than what it was in the past. So therefore, the difference between average kind of quality of engineering and kind of top-notch engineering quality will become even a bigger gap. So that is the good and the kind of the silver lining that we have here. But here, the first focus was very much on functional properties and functional software development. The non-functional side, and there are many, many things, but one thing is obviously interesting, is also around security, will probably completely redefined. Currently, I had just yesterday a kind of a meeting where we looked a bit into our long-term security strategy, and one of the stats that I saw was that most companies are investing something between 5 to 10% in security. If you look a bit into your own organization, then many are probably a little bit below that. To be frank, we also at that point in time, but we are currently rethinking what would be the right setup for security. But if you think a bit about how easy can now security attacks be formulated and organized with ChatGPT or code generation tools, then I'm pretty sure that security will become an even more critical factor for systems than it has been now. So therefore, everybody in security or every software engineer that is also responsible for security has actually a pretty bright future going forward. And if the productivity for engineering is actually at some point skyrocketing so much, especially for the topics that are at scale for needed, then ethical aspects that have been somehow baked in our product engineering processes for now will play an even more important role. If we can 10 times or 100 times faster write software code, then basically the shortcuts that are typically done around the ethical product decisions will have a more critical impact. Because if you are 100 times more productive, then basically you have 100 times more releases every week, every month, etc. So you iterate much, much faster over your proposition. So that is certainly something we all need to take very much into account. Let's see what this gentleman had to say 30 years ago.
Success is developers, 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 developers. Developers, 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 developers. Yes!
Many of you have most likely seen this clip, but just to remind that this is roughly 30 years ago. He has been later also CEO of Microsoft. At that time, certainly absolutely not a popular company. But what we are now going into with kind of all this kind of Gen AI and ML in software engineering applied methods is that the first time we actually can make everybody in our organization a developer. And let me give you a small example how this looks like in Picnic. In an organization like Picnic, we have an engineering team of a little bit more than 300 people. But actually, we have many people that are working as analysts with a little bit of Python skills, also in fulfillment, in distribution, in customer service. And all of them are writing small tools, sometimes a Slack plugin, sometimes a Python tool, sometimes a Google script. And they are connecting very much to our backend system. So in such a world, actually, your engineering team is not only the kind of the software engineers that are in an IT department, but it is in a broader extent, certainly the entire organization at some point. And the real question that we actually ask ourselves now is, who should not code? Is there anybody who should not code? And the question is still open if there should be anybody that is not part in the engineering process. So let me maybe close up with one example, just sharing a bit on a kind of an exciting project that we are working on and where we're trying to incorporate some of those kind of learnings. So we started with a fulfillment process. So this is basically the order picking in a warehouse that has been completely manual. And in such a kind of a process, you as an order picker go manually to a product. So you go to banana and a cucumber and cheese and pick this for a customer. And if you have all the products for a customer, you put this together in a bag and then it goes out of the warehouse and to the customer. However, this is not very smart. This is not very efficient because what you can do, you can make it the complete opposite way around. Instead of you going as an order picker to the product can come to you. with robots or with conveyor belts and with many kind of automated installations. So this is a system where we have the first iteration already built 2 years ago and have launched it. And now we're building the second iteration that in a couple of weeks we will launch. And I want to show you how how such a system is looking like in production, because this is something so exciting where you really see how machine learning and software engineering and robotics build an entire new service. So to close up, let me maybe give you 3 topics or 3 advices that I think we all should try to at least structurally take into account and apply while we are building our tech organizations, while we are building our tech teams. So the first thing is, while we are talking about technology and the technological disruption with machine learning, the worst what you can do is that you optimize too early towards a very specific technology. So we are seeing obviously now very impressive stuff by OpenAI or ChatGPT and by Mistral, but you see already the next generation is happening. So too early locking yourself in a specific technology will certainly not help you on the long term. And here nobody really can immediately foresee how the world will look like in maybe in half a year or 2 years. We will have every week basically some form of disruption. So this is something where creating optionality and keeping optionality open is probably the most important thing that we as software engineers and that kind of machine learning driven disruption need to take into account. And the second thing, and this is a dual to it, also we need to keep our organizations as agile and as flexible as possible. That means also however the organization looks like on your side, there's only one thing you should look into. Well, there are 2 things that you should be aware of. You will need to reorganize in the next weeks and months if kind of the next disruption is coming, number 1. And number 2, the way how the organization should be organized is how painful, or hopefully how little pain it makes to reorganize your organization. So therefore, optimizing for least pain during the reorganization is a kind of a new organizational principle that we all should keep in mind. So therefore, keeping optionality open. And the third one, and whatever you try in your organization with your products, with your different kind of engineering initiatives, is the real driver of efficiencies here and kind of capturing the opportunity is that you need talent density. And talent density, everybody is talking about it, and there's nothing really new, and this term itself has been coined probably 20 years ago by Netflix. But also we have been seeing this again and again and again. If you're working with great engineers left and right, with people, with engineers that can really structurally think not only about the opportunities today, but also tomorrow, that can work very closely with a product owner, very closely with the business counterparts, then you will certainly be able to capture those kind of opportunities. So these were the kind of the 3 messages that I want to share with you. That brings me also to the end of my talk. Thank you for your attention.